Hi, I'd like to explain a technique which I find most useful for people that have any kind of stress, anxiety, tension in their body, and they're trying to manage that. So when we get stress in our body, when we perceive a threat, our body reacts in a way to protect us. So this is known as the fight or flight system. So we have two nervous systems, our voluntary nervous system, where we do things with intention, and then we have our automatic nervous system. So this is like the accelerator and the brake. So we've got the on and the off. So the on is the sympathetic nervous system, and that's the stress response. And then the other side of this automatic nervous system is called the parasympathetic, which is the relaxation response. So unlike driving, we can only have one system on at a time. So it's either sympathetic, the stress response, or the parasympathetic, the relaxation response. Now, when our body perceives a threat, the stress response comes on, and this is a fantastic system, generally, which has helped us to survive as an individual and as a species. So what happens when this stress response comes on? We perceive a threat, and this little part of our brain called the amygdala, it's like a little alarm bell, and it gets triggered off by the perceived threat, and then a whole cascade of hormones and adrenaline nervous system response happens. And part of that is that the blood flow changes in the brain. So the blood shifts from our belly, where we do our sort of vegetative digestion and so forth. We don't quite need that when we're running away from the tiger. So the blood moves down to our lower legs, where we get to run. And also another aspect or another direction that this can go is the fight response. This is when the blood shoots up to the top of the head. Now, if you've lost your temper, most people have at some point. Some people do it more often than not. But generally you get like a flushed face. So you can see this sort of the heat rising and the blood circulating up here. It is basically to bring all this energy up to the arms, and this might be where we are going to fight and use our arms to defend ourselves. So another aspect that's going on with the physiology when that stress response is on is that the heart rate will increase, obviously, so it's going to be pushing this blood around much faster, so getting ready to act. The heart rate will go up and the breathing will increase to increase more oxygen for this action. So another part of the stress response that's not often realised is that there's actually blood flow change in the brain. So the blood shifts a little bit from our frontal lobes, where we do our clear thinking, our executive functions, and it moves back further into the brain stem, which controls our survival behaviour. So at those times when we lose our temper, if you've ever noticed, we can kind of say things that are pretty outrageous, and they're kind of fighting with our words. And then when we calm down, we go, "Oh my God, I can't believe I said that." So it's literally at that time, we're a little bit insane, actually. We're not thinking rationally, we're thinking, behaving and thinking reactively in a survival sense. So this is another thing to help understand what's going on with under tension and under stress, that we're not thinking clearly, and it's partly because there's just not enough juice up in the brain. So it's important to recognise this, because to be able to think clearly and to speak well when we're under stress, we really need to back off from that heated system of the stress response. So the stress response has a fight or the flight, and there's also the freeze response. This can be another symptom of anxiety, is that we kind of lose our voice. We don't know what to say. We get a bit sort of stuck, and that's also explained by this blood flow change and so forth. Anyways, that's the accelerator side of the situation. Now, to cool that down and turn on the parasympathetic, the best technique is actually with diaphragm breathing. The diaphragm is this muscle that attaches around the base of our ribs. It goes right through from the front all the way around to the back. And it generally hangs in this concave position because of the negative air pressure in the lungs. So when we inhale, what's happening is that this muscle contracts and comes down flat. And when it comes down flat, it opens up the bottom lobes of the lungs and draws air into the bottom lobes of the lungs. And it also pushes our belly out. So we end up with this movement on the inhale when the diaphragm's contracting. the diaphragm's contracting and it'll come down flat, get air into the bottom of the lungs, and the belly will move forward. So diaphragm breathing, when that muscle's moving, because we can't see it, we don't actually have the sensory nerves in there to feel it, but we can see that it's moving and we can see that we're operating it consciously by our belly moving. So on that inhale, the belly expands. So inhale, exhale, belly contracts. So that's the simple technique of diaphragm breathing. Now, our nervous system, as I say, has the voluntary and the automatic nervous system. Our breathing system, it's operated by both these nervous systems. So our breathing, our respiration system, is a way of interfacing between the voluntary and the involuntary. So here we've got this opportunity to monitor and manage and make a difference to our automatic nervous system, which is pretty incredible. We can't consciously change our heart rate, but we can consciously breathe as and how we want to. Most of the time, breathing's on automatic, but we can at any instant come in and operate that voluntarily. So this is what diaphragm breathing is. We're making a conscious movement of this muscle. Now, there's three ways that we get air into our lungs. So there's no muscles in the lungs. Our lungs expand because of our chest cavity pulls out and creates a vacuum and it sucks the air in. So there's one way to clearly demonstrate this. If you just raise your shoulders a little bit like that, you can feel just a little bit of air go through your nose, just about half a cup or something, not very much. But that gives you this mechanical demonstration that when we expand this upper lobe of our lung, that's creating a vacuum in that upper lobe there, and that sucks the air in. We drop that down, a bit of air pushes out. We often breathe with our chest, and this is what what we know as breathing and what we try to move when we're in a panic attack. So in a panic attack, what's actually happened is this diaphragm has gone into a spasm. Bang, it's not moving. And then there's actually not much air in here. We feel a bit concerned, haven't got enough air, so we go, oh my God, can't breathe. And then we're moving our shoulders, we're moving our chest, but this is still in a spasm. So by learning how to consciously operate this diaphragm, you're able to more easily prevent that escalation into that panic, or at that time of panic, you've got the memory, this is what I actually need to do to breathe, and I've got to move that muscle. Now the diaphragm is, in Chinese medicine, it's called the emotional storehouse. So this is one of the reasons why it acts as becomes suppressed in movement with anxiety and suppressed emotions. If you think about the way we talk with, we suck things up, squash things down, sweep it under the carpet. These are all kind of descriptions in a sense of locking things away. We're not going to feel our gut feelings. We're going to operate kind of up here. So we start to inhibit this movement of the diaphragm. So on a physical level, what happens on a physiological, explained on a mechanical level, on a physical level, physiological level, what's happening when we're moving this diaphragm, we're activating a vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve, in Latin it's related to the word life, it's the vagus nerve connects through this diaphragm. It has a connection to the heart rate centre in the heart, and also has a direct connection to this amygdala, this little part, the alarm bell in the brain. So when we are operating consciously the diaphragm, we're getting some action in the diaphragm, we are activating that vagus nerve, slowing down the heart rate, sending a signal to the amygdala, I'm breathing easily, therefore the threat's over. So normally what happens, we're, in some drama, some stress, some emotion, and then it's all over and we go, sigh of relief. And that's the diaphragm just shaking out that last bit of tension. But with this diaphragm breathing technique, you can operate this and you are then sending a signal to the brain, the threat's over, therefore I'm breathing easily, therefore the threat's over. On an energetic level, what we're doing is lowering the center of energy in the body. Instead of our attention being up here and operating from the top part of our body, we're just lowering the center of energy down into this, the belly, which is actually the geographical center of the body. So that's on an energetic level, that's also what's happening with this technique of belly breathing. And on a cognitive level, this technique is a distraction technique. So it's a distraction from the thoughts, and often these days with anxiety and stress, we've got the mental tigers. So we're perceiving a threat, but it's actually coming from our thoughts, from our memories or our worries, but our body's still responding in this physical way. So it's not the real tiger that's about to attack us, but our thoughts are generating these tigers. So our body's still responding as if it's a real one. So when we are paying attention to the belly breathing and the diaphragm moving, it's a distraction from those mental tigers. So this is also another cognitive way and an attention placing way that we're soothing down this nervous system. And again, soothing down the nervous system enables us to do more effective thinking and more effective speaking. So the technique, what I teach people to do is to practice this technique. So it's practicing the belly breathing for 21 breaths 3 times a day. 21 breaths, it's about 3 minutes, and it will give you just enough time to really develop that skill of and the experience of what it's like to move that diaphragm and to get the internal sensations of that ease of tension and that kind of cooling and that more sense of spaciousness within the body. So there's 2 skills to practicing this diaphragm breathing. One is to ensure that your belly's moving in the right way. Some people are actually switch, but it's important to, or one of the techniques you can use is to imagine that your belly is like a balloon. So on the inhale, you're focusing, it's useful actually to place your hand on your belly to give a point of focus for your mind. This is what I'm actually trying to do. I'm trying to get my belly to move out when I'm inhaling. So if you imagine that your belly is like a balloon, and on the inhale you're inflating that balloon, you're expanding the belly as if it's a balloon. So inhale, belly expands. Exhale, belly contracts. Inhale, belly expands. Exhale, belly contracts. Now don't do it too fast. This is the only thing that you can get some side effects from, and you're just going to get a bit dizzy. So a bit of hyperventilation. It's not a great deal. It's instant feedback that you're just actually getting too much oxygen too quickly. So you can't really do this too slow. So it's better to go slower, but you get that feedback if it's going too fast. But that's the only side effect, and it's not a great drama because you can just slow down. So with the breathing cycle, the inhale is when the inspiration, and that's when the sympathetic nervous system is dominant, and on the exhale is when the parasympathetic, the relaxation nervous system is dominant. So it's important, if you can, just sort of play with the breath, don't be too rigid about it, but to really to allow that the exhale is going to be longer than the inhale. So I like the image of a wave rising up the sand as it comes in quite fast. So like the inhale gets up to the highest point on the sand, and then without stopping, it just sort of slows and then turns down and falls back to the sea. And that's like your expiration, your exhale, and it just falls down to the sea effortlessly. And sometimes there's a little pause before the next inspiration comes in. So as you get more practice with this, your breath will become slower and you'll feel this sense of ease as the expiration just slowly draws out, and sometimes a bit of a pause. Now, sometimes advise people to exhale as if you're exhaling through a straw, so to purse your lips quite small that just helps to slow down that exhalation. So the three aspects of the skills is to get the diaphragm moving in the right direction and to regulate the pace. Slower is a lot better. And then the third skill is placing your attention. Now the attention is a key factor in this technique. As I say, it's a distraction from the mental tigers. It's also an ability to strengthen your attention placement. And this is what we also call a mindfulness practice, and it's actually increasing the connections between your front brain and your brainstem. So it's increasing, it's actually changing your brain, increasing more stability and presence of mind, which has a whole lot of other benefits in many aspects. So when you're paying attention to this breath, you're just really watching, keeping your attention on the sensations of your belly moving. So you're noticing the sensations around your belly as you're inhaling, belly's moving and expanding. You can feel the sensations on your hand and maybe on the seat or on the back of the chair. And then exhaling, you can keep paying attention to the movements and the sensations, the tactile sensations that are rising in your belly. Now, to maintain your attention on that belly sensations for 21 breaths, very difficult for most people. Simple, but not easy. Now, the opportunity comes for strengthening your attention when you notice that your attention has strayed from the object. So when you're paying attention, you've got the sensations on your body, and then your attention will drift off to the sound or some other thought, what are you going to have for dinner or something. When you notice that your attention's away from your object, which here is the belly, that's the opportunity of insight, and that's when you are able to lift your attention off whatever you got distracted by and bring it back to the breath. So counting the breaths, like maybe with your fingers or maybe even loud, 1, 2, and so forth, or just mentally saying the numbers, that can also help to keep your attention on the job. When everyone's attention goes off the object, the important skill development is recognising that it's gone off the object of focus and bringing it back. So I liken it to, when on a turntable and the needle gets scratched over onto different tracks, and then you just lift that needle and place it back on the track that you want. And that's as effortlessly with your attention. Once you notice your attention's on some other object, don't kind of analyse it and, I just want to finish, that recipe or whatever it is. Come back to it later and remember, lift it back so that more easily that you can return back. That's where you're strengthening your attention, and that's where developing the more brain training for mindfulness presence. Another way that I describe to people is with our attention is like a butterfly. So when a butterfly is flying around, it's really scattered. It's kind of dancing and it's really bubbling around all over the place. But when you notice a butterfly and it lands on a flower, it'll come in with such incredible stillness and poise. There might be a little bit of pulsing, but it's just the incredible stillness as that butterfly rests there so lightly. And the attention's like that. So bring your attention back to the breath, just lightly resting there, and it might easily get fluttered around. Bring it back and rest on that object again. Just lightly continue paying attention to that breath. Now the 21 breaths 3 times a day, do it as a regular practice for a week, see how it feels, and then you've developed it into a muscle memory, and this is something then that you can draw on at any other time when you feel that your body's getting tense. Good luck with that.